There you have it with the Padres, obviously in Arizona now for a few days. And here comes Tatis, as Bob Melvin just told you, son with Joe Musgrove, who hurt his toe there at the end of spring training. Jesse Agler does all their games. Radio play-by-play does a great job, and he says hello. First off, Jess, they need a little spark. They haven't played that well. 9-11, not hitting. Obviously, Soto yesterday, but he hasn't hit a ton. They had a good weekend in Atlanta, but that really has been it. So this is a big plus having these two guys come back, especially Tatis. How about that first? Let me hear.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, the team has not performed up to, the expectations that everybody has placed on them. And I don't think there's any concern in the clubhouse necessarily, at this point in the calendar. The old baseball cliche about wake me up on Memorial Day probably applies a little bit. But the bats have not done what everybody expected the bats to do. And anytime you get a player like this back, it's going to be a positive. It's going to be a good thing. And it's not just because of what he brings to the actual plate. It's just the energy that Fernando brings. It's the exuberance for the game. And it's a remarkable thing watching this guy play baseball because what he brings to the table is really kind of 360 degrees. It's what he does at the dish with the bat in his hands. It's what he does on the bases. It's what he can do in the field. And it's certainly what he brings to the dugout in the clubhouse as well.
I know Clevenger didn't like it, but he's no longer there. Is there any repairing that he has to do with some teammates based on him being out 80 days or 80 games, or is that long gone and they're going to welcome him with open arms? What's your take on that, Jess?
Yeah, I think that's long gone. I mean, in August, he addressed the team. They called a players-only meeting, and he kind of stood up in front of everybody in the clubhouse, said what needed to be said, and what the other guys have said about that meeting has been extremely positive. And, beyond that, time heals all wounds, but also he was in spring training, and spring training felt weirdly normal. It was very easy to forget he was serving a suspension during spring training. He was in there every day with the guys, a part of the team. He was playing games. We probably saw more than we saw, a bunch of the other big-name guys, A, because they needed to get him some work, and B, because so many of the others were away at the World Baseball Classic. So it really did feel incredibly normal during spring training, and I'm sure it will now as well. I really don't think there's any issue there at all.
All right, right field. I mean, I think if he has his druthers, he'd be back at short or maybe in center. He can't play center with Grissom. Shortstop, we know he's going to have to go back in right field, and that can be a lonely position. Is he going to embrace it? What's your take on that? Let me hear.
I do think he's going to embrace it, and he had fun with that during spring training as well. We got an opportunity to see it. That right there, that's what I'm most excited about is the arm. We've seen his arm from shortstop throwing, 98, 99 miles an hour over to first base. They finally ran on him late in spring training. It was like we were waiting the entire Cactus League season for somebody to try and go first to third on him, and finally it happened late. I forget who it was. I think it was a catcher, which was kind of funny. And he just threw an absolute dart from right field to third base. It was an easy tag for an out. And, the arm is going to play in right field. Obviously, the speed and the athleticism are going to play out there. Does he have to learn the finer points of the position? Sure, he hasn't spent a lot of time out there in his life. But he's just so incredibly athletic. I don't think there's any real concern about that. And, the Padres haven't gotten a ton of production offensively out of right field so far this year. And now you're kind of, taking what they have been getting and replacing it with one of the best hitters in the game. So, I don't think the right field thing is going to be an issue. Where we are a year from now or 2 years from now or 3 years from now and beyond, I don't think really matters right now. This team is locked in on trying to win a World Series for the first time ever. And that means for the time being Fernando in right field. And I think everybody's on board with that.
Yeah, he can't play the infield anymore with Bogarts and Machado there, so he's going to have to probably maybe go play center down the road. How about trying too hard, trying to make amends and almost putting a little pressure on himself? Your thoughts on that?
It's a possibility. It's human nature, right? And even right now, Juan Soto and Matt Carpenter and Nelson Cruz are saying things about, hey, yeah, we're all probably, trying to do a little bit too much here in the early going. That always happens in baseball. But Fernando knows how to shoulder those expectations. He's been through this kind of thing before, not coming back from suspension, of course, but, being the guy that everybody expected to do extraordinary things. And he's always not only embraced those expectations, he seems to exceed them, which is just a bizarre showing of his talent. So I don't think that piece of it is any real problem. The other thing is, again, to go back to spring training, when he was out there, got off to a very slow start at the plate at spring training. And I think a lot of fans and maybe some media kind of looking around out of the corner of their eye, like, hey, what's going on here? And then it just clicked for him and he was fine. So if he does get off to a slow start, probably can lean on that experience a little bit and know that everything clicked into place during spring training after he had some struggles at the start.
All right, the Padres, let's do them as a team. You know, they're getting 43,000 a night, which is what you like to see. Haven't played that great. Have they put too much pressure on themselves? It's a little different to come out of nowhere. But when you're wearing the bullseye on your back because of the high payroll, that's a little different, you know, to be the hunted instead of the huntee. What's your take with that? Let me see what you've seen first 20 games, Jess.
Look, there is no question. It is a different dynamic when you are, as you said, the hunted as opposed to the hunter. But I don't know that that's necessarily what's going on right now. I just think they're in one of those, as Bob Melvin said, funks. Those happen, you know, over the course of a season, even for great teams. You know, we've talked a lot about how the Braves were below 500 each of the last 2 years going into June. The Phillies, of course, last year didn't get right until very late in the season. They went all the way to the World Series. The Padres, quite frankly, in mid-September last year, there was a lot of question about how things were going to go, and they end up playing for a National League pennant against Philadelphia. So for me, the calendar is the main thing right now, and it's just so incredibly early out there. They've got a bunch of guys in the room who have been on good teams before. They've got guys in the room who have won World Series. They understand what this is. I really don't think that that's at play here. And the other reality of the moment is, you know, with as many playoff spots up for grabs as there are now, I think perhaps there's a little bit, and maybe this is subconscious, but a little bit less urgency, particularly early in the season, you know, than there was a couple of years ago when, you know, you kind of figured, hey, we might have to win the division to get in. That no longer feels like the case. And look, the goal obviously is to win as many games as possible. But just as I look around baseball right now, I have a sense that urgency is just generally decreased with the extra playoff spots that we've had the last couple of years. And I don't think that's unique to the Padres.
100%. And when you add more teams, the idea is to make the playoffs, not necessarily look at the Phillies, a wild card team, as you said. Finally, now let's get to Musgrove. What's your take on his beginning part of the year, and what's the pitch count for him over the weekend in Arizona? What can you tell me there?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be built all the way up. I think he was around 70 pitches in his last rehab start. So if you want to add 15 or 20 to that, that's probably reasonable for Saturday. Of course, it is always about the long game. But, I mean, this guy has an uncommon ability to lead as a starting pitcher. You don't often hear that in the game about starters. You know, they only go out there once every 5 or 6 days. But the respect that this guy has in the clubhouse and obviously in this community, being from San Diego, is extraordinary. And so his presence is a big deal. He's a guy that stands up in front of the cameras. He's a guy that can say the tough things to teammates when the doors are closed and sometimes when the doors are open. He's, you know, one of those holds everybody accountable kind of people. And at the top of that list is himself. And he holds himself very accountable. He's a fierce competitor. It's obviously a very, very good thing for the Padres that he's coming back. And look, it's that old thing, too. You know, when you add somebody back into the rotation, that by default makes your bullpen better because he's going to push somebody down into the bullpen. We don't know yet who that's going to be or for how long that lasts. But, you know, the rotation gets better and the bullpen gets better just by Joe Musgrove putting that uniform on for the first time on Saturday.
100% right. Everybody trickles down a notch. That's a plus. Good job, Jess. Enjoy the weekend. Appreciate you coming on here today.
Always my pleasure. Thanks, Chris.